I'm just looking through the chat and I'm really jealous that some people seem to have shorts weather and yeah, it's cold here and almost what 3-4 feet of snow in the last week. Um, my name is Natasha. Good evening and welcome to our February 2025 Idea Jam. I will be your chair this evening as Stan will be joining us and his guest shortly. Sorry. So this is our Idea Jam for the Canadian Network for Imagination and Creativity, or CNIC for short. So my fellow friends in creativity and members of CNIC are with us this evening and are scattered about on your Zoom screen. So if they could give us a quick wave at a couple. It's great to be back in this hour-long gathering place in our video conferencing world to share with you our different topics from our hosts and guests, and then to the open discussion that flows afterwards with you. We look forward to this each month to an in-depth conversation, and that always encourages and sparks our creativity. Our goal here at CNIC is to see our creativity and imagination from the different backgrounds we come from, the different angles we see from, and to create and foster open, forward-thinking dialogue. We're always looking to find new ideas and to see things from different perspectives and to ask questions and explore our inner innovation and imagination. It's our hope that through our discussions that we have at each event, that we can expand our minds in new directions, collaborate through idea sharing, create partnerships in our differences, in our sameness, and in our beliefs, and carry forward the many ideas into our worlds. We want to find and foster our inner and outer creativity through exploration of our imaginations and ideas, and to do this together with each other in our learning and listening space. I would like to acknowledge at this time, as Stan said, that as a guest to the Kitchener-Waterloo region in southeastern Ontario, Canada, that I'm chairing our meeting on and in the Haldimand Tract traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabeg, and Haudenosaunee peoples. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada and Haldimand treaties, and this meeting space is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to enjoy and visit this space this evening. So our idea jams are a space to learn, explore, and share. As part of that, we want to reflect and participate in the way that you're most comfortable with and make this idea jam space your own. We want to hear your ideas through conversation. This is a place where talking your ideas out is what it's all about. We want to hear your thoughts, your visions, and each time we meet, and today is no exception, we always look forward to getting new ideas. Our format here is very simple. Once our hosts guide our discussion for the evening, we will open the floor to you for our chats and conversations to begin and see where our journey will lead us. During our time together, nothing is a bad idea. Every discussion point helps move the ideas along. So please take this opportunity to explore and share as your insight may be the spark that lights somebody's creativity fire. Zoom is our platform of choice for this discussion. It allows you to participate in many different ways. There's the built-in controls that allow you to raise your hand so we can see when you wish to join in the conversation. You can also use the chat function, which keeps the ideas and thoughts flowing, or you can also share your emotions with the little emotion reactions as well. We want you to share your ideas in your way and join our jam. For tonight's jam, it's going to be led by Stan Baines and his guest, and we will be discussing imagination inside the box, finding creativity when you can't see outside the box. So let's get started, and I'll turn it over to Stan.
Well, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you, right? And thank you, Natasha, for doing that, because I know that's a bit much. And so it's very interesting, right? If there's one thing that definitely creates a panic for me, it's when it's my turn to do an idea jam. Throwing the floor over to somebody is so much easier than having the floor thrown over to yourself. So let's kind of see how this goes here a bit. So I love and I'm really encouraged each time that we can meet to have our idea jams. This is something that I've really actually believed in from the inception of the idea when us as a committee actually started to talk about all of this stuff. So This to me is not just to be able to share in and learn about what creative and imaginative things are happening around me, but it's more so to kind of figure out, well, who am I in all of this and where does my creativity kind of fit in? So I will often ask myself, like, am I actually creative? Do I have an imagination beyond, wanting to win the lottery? Do I feel that energetic spark to let my creativity free? And I wonder often, how come if I just sit here and try and find it, nothing kind of immediately comes to me? So what happens if I can't find it, or at least I don't know that it's there? Well, honestly, I do know that it's there because I'm here with all of you. It's always in me somewhere, I think. But if I don't really sit there and sit down and kind of think about it and take a hard introspective look, I don't immediately see where it is. So my inner creativity to me doesn't kind of jump out at me. So this is why our idea jams absolutely fascinate me. This is what draws me back every month. This is why to me it's worth our time that we invest here every month and spend this hour with each other. I really do love hearing from all of you in the room that the things that you've shared or that you see as creative or where you use your imaginations in the things that you do. I love hearing about the innovative things that you do, and I can tell through your work or what you do in your spare time, and that creativity and imagination are a major part of your life, and you seem to be very aware of it. But when I look at my own day-to-day life, or when I look at what I've done for work or the things that I do in my spare time, I don't always see it, or at least I don't recognize how to see it outside of the box. Well, this becomes especially true when I look at certain career paths and jobs that aren't really creatively based. These are the routine tasks that just simply need to be done. My mind does not immediately see the imagination in following the rules every day and repetitively doing a task. So I started to wonder, are you inside the box in your environment? Is creative thinking limited by your work or the rules of the system that you
Mm.
exist in? So I realize for many in our group, this isn't really a problem. We have many teachers, professors, artists, and other work environments that allow for the full expression of your creative juices to flow, as so to speak. It allows for your imaginations to be free with little or no constraints. You exist inside of spaces and places to me that encourage, want, and need your artistic freedoms in order for the students that you serve or the people that you interact with or experience the things you do on a regular basis to experience your creativity to enhance their learning, enhance their business, or collaborate better as a team. But what happens when you work or live in an environment that doesn't call for your creativity, or at least not obviously? What happens when you see life in black and white forms and forget to find the cracks in the system where color actually exists? What happens when you just find yourself in a place where creativity and your imagination almost feel like something that you've made up and really is just your imagination? Well, then you're in a box. Somewhere in there, you may be bursting at the seams to draw on the walls, sing at the top of your lungs, or soapbox your way through an Oscar speech, but feel trapped by your surroundings. How can you be and find your creativity when all you can see is the cardboard box around you? So, as part of the journey this evening, I thought to myself, why not get everybody in my world in a panic about presenting? And I decided to invite along my very good friend and colleague, Kaylin Lapine. And we want to explore this concept with you and see what ideas, what thoughts, and what ways we can kind of combat being stuck in the box with our creativity. So, Kaylin, what do you say?
Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Kaylin. I'm happy to be here with you guys this evening. I've been coming to the Idea Jams for about 3 years now, and every time I come into a presentation, I find it really interesting because I'm learning something new from all the different presenters. And I find it really challenges me to find my creativity in places that I wasn't expecting it to be. So in my world, just for context, I'm the educational services officer with our union at work, and I'm also the proud chief custodian at Knoxdale Public School in Ottawa. My day-to-day job is super routine, and it's pretty much worked out for me to the minute. So the activities might change, people might change, and at times the work might vary, but generally it's a type of work where you can often predict the day if there are no emergencies, thank God. My union role is also laid out for me in detail as well, right? There's not a lot of areas of creativity required. And really, even if there is, there's still limits, right? The roles that I do with the school board and the union are really regulated and are very systematic, but they're designed to keep us, the staff, and the students safe. It's also meant from a union standpoint to maintain the consistency and to keep our members safe while they do their job. So when Stan and I were originally talking about what our scenic topic could be, immediately it came back to where it always does with us. What are we going to talk about? We're not creative, and how are we going to cover a topic of any nature?
Agreed. Right. For as much as I talk when it comes to my idea jams, like I said, I absolutely panic simply because my fear of not being creative kicks in, and that feeling or moment of being stuck, shell shocked, and worried that I actually have nothing to talk about. So yeah, what are we going to talk about indeed? Well, this to me is where my box begins to show. This is, if anything, as I look at the idea jam slots for the year with everyone's creative ideas, and I watch as my box kind of grows bigger around me, my natural question then turns from what can I be creative about and what can I talk about to, well, what happens when you aren't feeling creative, and who talks about that? Or what happens if you're stuck in a place of no go ideas? And well, basically, here we are.
So that was exactly it. We do so many routine things that we often forget that while we're in the box, there's so many things happening outside of it too. So, on top of the new worry that Stan had graciously decided to share with me, and my regular job of looking after a large elementary school from a facilities perspective, I was right in the middle of feeling stuck with a big task that I do for the union, which is plan our section of the system wide professional development day for almost 900 members, actually. So it's my responsibility with that to plan the time and the place for every individual workshop, potentially create workshops from scratch, get the food, order the swag and the door prizes, and make sure every member is accounted for and is signed up for the right workshop, and work out the details with management. And it sort of falls within the expectations of the board and the union. And it's exhausting.
Okay, so wait. So you're doing your regular work on the daily, and then to add to that, you're in the process of creating these workshops and activities. Well, this is sounding kind of to me like you actually have to be very creative for all that. So this sounds like you need to be on your toes and be using a lot of creative energies and imagination to actually make these things work. So how then are you stuck in the box? Like, am I actually missing something here?
Yes, but no. So, okay, let me tell you. This year, I found myself in a box more often than not, right? It was hard to find my way out, and I actually resorted to begging and pleading trusted supervisors and members to help facilitate some of the workshops and help out. My creative flow just, it wasn't there, right? I was stuck seeing only the walls around me, and nothing was coming from anywhere, and there was a sense of feeling, hopeless with the space that I was in.
So, okay, based on what I'm hearing so far, then, so this obviously sounds like a lot of work, and this sounds like it must take kind of a lot of time and energy on top of what you're actually usually doing. And it sounds like things aren't coming together as easily as they should, even though this is something that should be kind of fairly routine. So, where then are your hangups? Like, where are the issues occurring in this?
Yeah. Well, it sure does take a lot of time. And I had many hangups, but this is purely done out of love for our members, right? So last year I planned it. Um, and when I planned it, it seemed like a breeze, right? I could ask somebody, they would say yes without hesitation. It wasn't a problem, right? This year was the opposite. It was a constant fight and a constant struggle to plan out any part of the day that makes our members feel human and makes them feel seen, right? Because they do a lot of hard work in the shadows. There's a lack of energy, a lack of seeing the benefit in this day, a lack of imagination to see the good in something that might seem like a little bit of work.
So, okay, basically, then you are stuck in the box. So it seems that even in a situation where you can kind of operate out of routine, things don't always come together or line up creatively. So it sounds that even when you can kind of do your own thing within this, it can be hard to see beyond the walls that are blocking you. So in this case, it sounds like a mix of people, time, availability, and personal engagement. Well, as part of my journey to better understand myself and my own creativity, caring is something that I'm recognizing for me is an important creative energy that I need to kind of exist in. It's hard for me to do something that I'm not actually fully passionate and engaged in. So being to me in my highest creative mode or imagination space means that I actually kind of have to care enough to do it. So this is a problem then if I need to kind of do something outside of that. So where are you finding yourself in that?
You're onto something there. So I think this is where being stuck in the box can have its issues, right? This is where we can begin to feel restricted and limited and not creative at all. My creativity comes out of love and a passion for what I do. It's not out of necessity. But let me get back to my story and then I'll kind of explain where I am in this, okay? So during this, I feel and felt like a victim of the system that we all have to play within, right? And I'm sure you all feel that as teachers and people who work within similar regulated environments. I felt like I wouldn't be able to find my way out of being stuck between what I wanted to do because I knew it would be helpful to people and what the system would allow me to do. So I couldn't see my way out of the box. I had to get creative, right? Once I realized that I was stuck, I then had to find my way out. So I had to make some choices. I wanted to see if I would fight for what I knew was going to be helpful or just roll over and leave it, right? That's always an option. Once I figured out that I was much too stubborn to do that, I had to get creative to think about how I could help from the little box that I was stuck in.
Okay, so let me see if I'm following you so far and I understand this correctly. So the first step in realizing that you're stuck in the box is to actually recognize the box, right? So if I get this, you need to see the limits placed around you in your environment, recognize the do's and the don'ts, and see the places where you can go and the ones where you can't go past go. So basically, to put it simply, you need to size up the box you're in and recognize that it actually exists.
Yes, that is it exactly, right? So in order to understand why you're hitting the wall, you need to know how tall it is, how wide it is, how long it is, right? In many cases, and I hope to find this out with everyone this evening, we can often get stuck in our limitations within our environment because we're not always seeing the limits for what they are and then being able to think beyond them.
Okay, so I agree with that. So I've often found that my most frustrating moments come from feeling limited in my ability to actually think outside of the box because I'm not actually realizing the box itself. I don't understand why things aren't working. I forget my place in it. Nothing's lining up naturally, and I kind of don't know where I'm standing. So without that, I seem to be missing the bigger picture. So if I'm trapped then inside of it, there has to be a way out of it because I recognize and I know that I'm more than the box that I'm actually in.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, with that, let me ask the first question to the group. All right. So we kind of want to divide our thoughts out tonight so that we can section everything and move on to the next section. All right. So our first question is, where does your creativity come from? Right? What things drive your imagination or your creative essence? Is it coming from the love that you all have for the little people in your classroom? Or does it come from the feeling of, getting the job done? Does it come from leaving things to the last minute? Maybe it might come from the little annoying voice in the back of your head telling you to do it now so you don't forget to do it. Or maybe it's just always there, right? So, where does your creativity come from? Let me throw it out to you all and then just raise up your hand or use a Zoom raise hand feature and let's hear where your creativity comes from. I don't know if I call on people. I've never done
I
this
was
Go
before.
for it, Fred. I can see your hand there.
Well, as you were talking, I'm writing notes to myself and then all of a sudden you would say exactly what I've written down and I'm going, "Oh yeah." So this past week, uh I had to prepare questions for a Bible study on fear and hope. And I had Stan's topic in the back of my mind. And I was thinking about in the Bible study questions, what are some of the sources of my fear? And one of it is I'm not extremely practically able. I'm not a great do-it-yourselfer. And we have a rain head shower in the bathroom that has calcified and starting to spray in all directions so that you can't hide in the shower until it warms up because you're going to be in this little tiny spray. And I was trying to think about what you meant by the box. And I realized that my restriction at that point was the CLR ads of holding up a pail of water to decalcify the shower head. And I thought, now what would Stan say? And so I got a stool. I went up and I rubbed the nipples on the shower head. 1 minute later, it was fixed. And it's been weeks that I hadn't fixed this problem. So I'm arguing that we need to maintain a rich environment when we're even in the box and we don't know it, like you said. But the fact that when we have these other factors going on that stimulate us and we try to bring these discordant things together, I think we can perceive the box as a little easier and also start to think, what if I just got a stool and rubbed my hands over the shower? And the
Oh
magic.
man, that's really good. That's really good because I'm terrible with that stuff. I'm not practically minded either. So my creativity would have been throw that one in the garbage and go buy a new one. So you already beat me to the game on that one.
No,
That's
learn
good,
from
Fred.
my mistakes. Learn from
Yeah,
my
well,
mistakes.
and you're gonna like the next question too, because it kind of feeds into a lot of what you're saying. That's really cool. Thank you for that. John, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Sorry, coming to you from my truck as my kids are at piano lessons right now, so hopefully this is coming through. But love the fact, like, I've been talking about design theory is kind of where I've been sitting for so long, and what is design thinking. I talk with my students all the time about defining what the box is, because how many times have we, in response to someone not knowing something, particularly if you're an education student, like, I don't know how to do it. How many times have we used the phrase, you need to think outside the box, and almost like we walk away like we've done our job, right? And like they have no idea what that means. And so I've kind of created, okay, what is the definition? And for me, and my understanding of it, it's your comfort zone. Every skill you know, every process that you go through, that you are confident, you know that you can figure it out, that is your box. And so the creativity, leaning into that discomfort of, oh, I need to change something, that is also a skill that can become inside your box. Because every time you learn a new skill or a new process, your box expands. And that's, to me, what growth is. My biggest problem with some of the initiatives that I'm doing is that when I see the system and I'm trying to create a creative solution, the status quo gets in my way. And the people that are in a position of power or leadership above me don't have the same understanding. And it kind of stop gaps, any sort of momentum. And that's can be very, very frustrating for anyone that's trying to be creative. Um, so that's kind of how I look at it. And of course, everything you're saying just makes me think so much about like so many ideas, and I don't want to take up anyone else's time because I love hearing everyone, but just that kind of idea. Okay, the box is your comfort zone, and we all have different size of boxes based off our experiences, our knowledge, and our continuation of personal growth. So
I was just going to say a lot, sort of some of what you were saying too, John, about, so I work in the education system, and when you work with students, we're always supposed to be thinking outside the box and how do we meet their needs. Well, one of the things that I do is, we sort of have some kind of packaged presentations and trainings that we do. And what's so frustrating is that some of those have certifications attached to them, but you have to do them in this, everybody's supposed to do them the exact same way. And, one time we sort of did something that was a little bit more hands-on. And one of the people that we were presenting to, she was like, oh, that exercise, that was amazing. And we're like, yeah, actually, we weren't really supposed to do that, but we did it anyway because it's more engaging. So it's funny how, as educators, when we're educating educators, we don't use the same things that we try to teach. So, the constraints are so frustrating. And I think to talk about the box, sometimes the box is almost imaginary. So as somebody who has worked on PD days for, the past decade, well, my biggest box is hearing the voices of years past, right? Of people, of the complaining of, well, there was nothing there for me. And, it's the same as last year, and sort of trying to find new ways of saying the same things that, like I create my own box. So sometimes it's trying to figure out how to get out of the box that you created for yourself, and then figure out what box you're actually in, and the society box and the constraints, and it's just box to box.
That's really good. Okay, this is kind of a really good start. This is why I'm glad we're kind of operating through like this, because this gives us an idea, right? We all know where our creativity is coming from, and we all kind of have an idea, but when you're kind of limited around where your stops are, then that's a real problem to our creativity. So knowing where our creativity comes from, what makes it work and what we find joy and where we're happy with it, is the first step in being able to work outside of our confines. This is where, no matter what the limits are in your realities, you realize and recognize and see that creativity lies really in everything that we do. Sometimes because we crave and need it, and sometimes out of, well, pure necessity. I often will find in my world that the rules and the systems put in place to ensure continuity and, make sure everything's okay, don't really allow for that creative expression. Well, this, as we've kind of discussed, is due in part to old hierarchies like we have in school boards and many businesses, where there's almost a threatening nature to the concept of new ideas, new ways of doing things, or simply seeing it from a different angle. Well, this is where keeping people in the box has been a matter of consistency in our society forever. But as we know, we're seeing a shift. We're seeing that the more people are kept in, is the more we not only miss out in society, but is oddly, the more people seem to be finding ways to break free and embed their creativity even into places where it once couldn't be. So for so many of us, then, we've gotten used to being in the box for so long, we forget that we're dreamers, we're writers, we're artists, we're painters, we're musicians and thinkers, and so much more, right? The systems have held us down in some instances to the point of stagnancy. But I think the worst box of all we found ourselves in really is the very ones that we create for ourselves. It's the boxes we do impose on ourselves that stifle our own creativity that's our biggest enemy. So, Kaylin, let me go back to you for a second. Is the box you're in yours, or is it somebody else's?
Um, that's a good question. So, I think it is similar to what Natasha said, right? I think that the box that I'm in, I made, and then I gift wrapped it all nice. There's a bow and everything, especially for myself, right? I'm currently trying to climb out of the box because I can see all the work that I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and that it will probably be fine. But I might be in my own box right now. But I only say that because, like, I look at all the time and the energy and the effort that I put in, and it'll make the membership feel seen and loved, right? And it's still not enough, you know? I feel like I did everything right, but I'm standing here and saying, well, last year I had this and I had that, so this year won't be as good. Why? There's nothing wrong with this year. I'm lucky to have some pretty good friends, right, that are pulling me out of the box, but I might be fighting to put myself back in it.
Okay, so then that you've raised a good point, and we started kind of getting into that in the first shot. So I'm going to put out question 2 to the group. So we know for each of us what drives our creativity, but if you were to look at your creative low points when you're just not feeling it, how often have you put yourself into a box that was imposed on by you, or was it by your work or your environments, the things that you do? But really, it's what was stopping you, right? Where did your box come from? Was it you that did it? Was it somebody else? What were your causes? And kind of what happened to cut off your flow, right? So, like I said, I know what drives so many of us. So let's hear then where like take a moment to think, but where are you stopped? Like, what has kind of killed your flow? Was it you, or was it something that was done to you? Mary.
My biggest problem with things of that kind, I would refer to as masterpiece syndrome. There were a couple of occasions during grad school, notably, and also with some courses I've taught, that I was trying too hard to just keep replicating a great plan and create a masterpiece. Well, then the plan itself becomes the box. And also this notion that you're going to create a masterpiece in the case of my grad school work, I thought, oh boy, this is going to be great. Well, it wasn't. And if I could have just left the plan and gone ahead and said, look, this isn't working, do something else, I would have been much more productive and learned a lot more. But I was so committed to the plan, I was unable to see that at the time.
Wow, that's a really interesting perspective. Thank you for that. Like, see, I'm a planner and I die without plans, right? Like, I mean, so I think though listening to that, I think that's part of where my box comes in. If there's no plan and I can't follow something to the letter, then I expect it to fail because without the plan, it should be perfect. But then oftentimes the plan, like you said, is the very thing that actually kills it. That's really cool. Thank you. Right. That's really interesting. John.
Yeah, really interesting what you had said there before, Stan, about that box being enforced on you. So I'll try to be as brief as possible. To give you an example, I'm a tech ed teacher or a shop teacher, basically. We call them BCs, woodwork, metalwork, all that kind of stuff. Doing it for years. We have had a lack of people coming into education for years. And about 8, 10 years ago, I actually had this idea is like, why don't we flip the model? Instead of trying to go out and get construction people and trades-based people and try to make them teachers, why can't we take passionate teachers and give them the skills of doing these construction-based things? And thought, one of the ideas who's actually who gave me the idea to go with it was Dr. Charles Scott, who I know has been part of this jam as well and introduced me to it. When I pitched the idea to him, I thought, oh, it's going to be shut down. There's no way, so on and so forth. And he, because of his landscaping background, he was like, no, John, you could do this and you could do this, you could do this, and you could teach the courses. And I went, wait, what are you talking about? And so I went, started to do all the research around it. So I phoned BCIT, which is the only place in BC you can get qualified to be a tech ed teacher. Right away, they said, no, can't do it. Got to come through here. I went, no teacher is going to take 2 years off unpaid to do this. I was like, okay, start phoning Ministry of Education, so on and so forth, all Work Safe BC, Teacher Regulation Brand, all these people, and they kept coming out with, well, there's no jurisdiction. We don't have jurisdiction. We don't have jurisdiction. And what I realized through all my research, it's the district lawyers that need you to have this qualification in order to use power tools in the classroom. That's it. And as long as it comes from an accredited university, you can do that. So I created a program, a master's level program that led into a master's of educational leadership at City U, alongside with Dr. Scott for a year, and then COVID hit and it died. But now I've actually finally, after years, convinced my district to allow me to do it, because I'm like, why do we keep letting universities do this when we can do this in-house? But every time I try to go through a superintendent or someone, there's always this block, and they kept putting me in my box and like, no. And I'm like, but it's not a no. If you can't tell me why it's a no, I would figure out a way. And long story short of that is we're actually piloting this program now, and we're qualifying teachers, and the people that are in it are now taking this idea of using power tools, and they're empowering their English language learners, because those kids couldn't take it before, but now they can support them in class, and our resource teachers and all these other people that wasn't the design of the program. But I'm seeing just the creativity of our profession, and the people are now able to take that. I take the liability off them, and I'm just watching them grow. And that's what I love, is seeing, that connection piece with people. So yeah, that idea of like, people are putting a box on you. For me, if they can't explain why it's a no, it's never a no. Don't let it get you down. Like, just keep grinding.
Oh, that's great. And especially too, like for those of us that work in the education system, especially in school boards, right? We recognize very clearly the hierarchy of how things go and just how difficult it is to kind of turn things over, right? But that's really good. John V, you're up next.
This reminds me of Daniel Pink, who wrote a number of books, and one of which is Drive. And he talks about the difference between people who are intrinsically motivated because they're interested or curious, and extrinsically motivated because they're getting paid to do something, because their work demands them to do something. And he gives this example of, there's a group of kids, You give them crayons and paper and they start drawing pictures. You divide the kids into two groups. One group you pay, and the other group you just let them continue to draw. Eventually, the group who's being paid stops producing drawings unless they're going to get paid. And when we are extrinsically motivated, that tends to narrow our focus. That tends to sort of, and so people extrinsically motivated often are less creative, in terms of solving puzzles, coming up with solutions. And so curiosity and our intrinsic motivation, because we want to do something, we really want to, is a really important component that fuels our creativity.
Oh, that's really good. Thank you. And see, this is why it's really good to kind of hear these different thoughts and perspectives this evening, because it's going to flow right to kind of where we want this to at the end, to have some really good realizations of what these boxes really are about. Kaylin?
I was going to say, they tell you, so I knit, right? And they tell you, if you like something, generally, or my family says this anyways, you don't sell it, right? You don't make dishcloths to sell, right? You make them for your family because you love them and you want them to have that joy when you give it to them, right? So it's the same thing about the motivation, right? So I think when we look at the ways that we can be trapped in our spaces to our creativity, both imposed by our work and then imposed by our lives, and especially when we trap ourselves into our boxes, then we need to be able to learn to see beyond what stops us from expressing what we know lies within us, right? So there's an honorable mention here. The lack of sleep and not eating right and feeling overwhelmed and just not seeing the end of the road because we're stuck in a pothole, that can all have effects on our ability to be able to feel creative or imaginative in the moments that we need it.
Well, this is it, and I've learned something. So you do knitting, I will now be part of your family because I could love to have free dishcloth. But that aside, going back to what I said at the beginning, right? Going back to what I said at the beginning, when I look at these spaces to find my own creativity, I really do realize that I kind of trap myself into my own box. I place those limits on my imagination and what I can do creatively because I don't see the potential in what I do or how I live in regards to my creativity. I've really kind of limited that off. I've created a box for it that only seems to include things like, well, being able to play an instrument or painting a picture or being able to write a story. I can see creativity in something like sidewalk chalk art or listening to somebody play a piano, but I can't see that even having this conversation this evening is a creative element. Well, because I've put all of that stuff in the box, then it's not there to me. But when I choose to see the box, know that it is not the limit, then I begin to really realize that my creativity and imagination is something that actually can't be contained, even when my environment demands it. I just simply need to be able to kind of pull these things out and go, it doesn't stop there. Mary, go ahead. Oh, you're muted, Mary.
I just wanted to note that the so-called genius grants, the MacArthur Awards, have been given to people in all kinds of lines of work, from being a professional clown to making rocking chairs to being a politician to being a social activist. And so it's not just because of that, but in general, I think it's really valuable to see the creative possibility in everything that we do. There's always that possibility if we're prepared to do it. I've taught a lot of drawing classes, and let me tell you, observational drawing is hard. And when people say, "Oh, I so wish I was creative. I can't draw a straight line," and it's like, don't compare yourself to drawing. Drawing is tedious for most people. It's quite tedious. Whereas there are ways to be creative about rethinking your approach to almost anything if you give yourself that space.
Well, and this is exactly it, right? This is kind of where we are sort of doing this. So when we posed the statement of finding creativity when you can't see outside of the box, it was more designed to look at first as to what was blocking you in your circumstances. But it seems more now that the limits are not about what you do or where you work. It's more about our ability to see past what's keeping you in. So that's a very good example, right? I've limited my creative elements, and I've spoken about this with my scenic steering committee before, to go, yeah, I know that art and creativity and imagination is beyond the tangible. Like, somebody who paints is imaginative, somebody who plays instruments is creative. I know it's beyond that, but it's about trying to pull those things out of the box, right? So this is about us at times, and especially as I'm seeing it, making this box so very limiting, right? And on top of then not getting enough sleep sometimes, or leaving things to the last minute, or finding the task repetitive or with no kind of purpose at all, well, then we're not really seeing the full benefit of some of this stuff, and we're writing it off. Well, for me, that keeps me in my space of that lack of creative vision. I'm not seeing the potential, I'm just seeing the roadblocks.
Well, you know what, Stan, if you want to look at an environment that seems limiting and repetitive and lacks creativity, prior to being a chief custodian, I was cleaning schools during the evening as an evening custodian, right? So my job was to go to a different school every day to replace someone that had called in sick. And it was basically, you know, wipe, sweep, mop, vacuum, same rooms, same schools, not much space for creativity or imagination within that. But I was constantly having to be creative with my sequence of how I clean things, because I didn't really have any prior knowledge of how it was done to begin with, right? So sometimes the section of the school that I had to clean, coupled with any of the after school activities or groups that would rent the areas around the school, it looked pretty impossible, right? But how I cleaned was creative, even when I was limited, and how creative I could be within the environment, right? So my little box that keeps us safe, it always needs to be following the rules and keeping myself safe and other people safe. But other than that little box, I can almost be as creative as I want, but I didn't kind of see that until right now, as I'm telling you. So I feel like if we're trying to look outside of the box and trying to see beyond what it looks like in the end, we need to keep doing that, right? Looking over the box.
Yep, you make a very good point there. Sharon. Oh, you're muted still.
Thank you. I'm an artist, and what touches me is the beauty in nature. That's what motivates my creative spirit. And as an educator, I really, since I've been to Reggio Emilia, take from the children what their interests are, or the students. And so I don't do the same thing with two classes, because who is in the class has different interests. And so that keeps me learning about different things, or artists, or whatever it is that they want. I don't have the same sequence of classes or the same students in the class, and I do what they want to learn and what they're interested in, be it animals or shadows or focus, whatever it is that's hard for them to do or interesting for them to do. I think of a creative way to present it. And it's fun for me because I don't do the same thing all the time. I'm always learning whatever it is they're wanting to learn about, be it an impressionist artist or whatever they want.
See, and this is exactly kind of what we're talking about this evening, right? So this kind of is going to bring me to our third question, right? So when it comes to our creativity and our imagination, we know the only real roadblock to everything is us. We are our own limits. So then how do you get outside of the box, right? So we looked at, where does our creativity come from? And we looked at how boxes are imposed on us and how we can impose them on ourselves. So we want to know then, how do you move from those trap places to getting something that works? Like John had something really good there about working with his board to get that program in. So what are some of the ways the rest of you, or anybody, right? So I love hearing this stuff. How do you get from your trapped places of stagnant no-goes to something that actually really works for you. Take a moment, process even whatever kind of comes to your mind, because this is where we begin to kind of really flourish. Ming Yu.
Hi, sorry, my camera is not working today. You know what? The question started to make me feel like creativity or bugs are bugs. You know, when we only see the walls, that's why we get stopped, right? So why can't we see the space inside the box? If we only think, oh, I cannot get out of the box, I cannot find a way to walk out of the box, it's kind of limitation. So why don't we just play as much as we can inside the box? Then we will find a chance to push the walls further and further, and someday the box become bigger and we have more space. That's just the other way to think about this question.
That's really good, because this is exactly it, right? We do not have to find the box to be overwhelming either, right? This can be, if you look at how children play, right? Children, you know, you buy your kids gifts for Christmas, and what's the first thing they do? They want to play with the box, especially the really little ones, right? So this is where exactly we can take some of these limitations and make them limitless. Like, that's literally what that is. So that's really good. Thanks, Ming. Blaine.
Thank you, Stan. Good to be with you this evening. I think that for me, bringing creativity to the forefront requires a couple of things. First of all, I think a deep belief or commitment to the dream, to the actual fruition of what it is that you're trying to create. And then secondly, I think it requires a tremendous amount of persistence. And that persistence doesn't negate the fact that it may involve risk-taking, it may involve being rebuffed by others, it may involve all kinds of things, both positive and negative, but it's holding on to the dream, holding on to the possibility and the potentiality of realizing what it is that you're trying to create that helps me to achieve that which I've sought to bring forward.
Well, that's really good. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Right. And this, and you, that's kind of it exactly, right? Is that you need it. We all need a starting point to do whatever it is we're doing. But even when things don't work out, if you don't keep your mind focused on what it is that you want and keep your heart in the game, then you limit yourself right off the word go with that. Thanks, Blaine. Steve.
Thank you. This is such an inspiring group. I'm a retired hotelier and a serial volunteer. So, Blaine, I'm going to follow in your words. 20 years ago, I had a dream, and I spoke to two friends, and we co-created the dream. I presented it to a board, and Stan, they really shook the branches. This is almost boasting, but last night, 800, that project had raised $800,000 in 20 years. Now, 10 years ago, it took a dip, and because of students, it revived itself. So this is kind of the perfect case. However, the difficult work was there, the initial work, and then the naysayers, and that you kind of have to self-motivate or go to therapy or do whatever. So hopefully that made a bit of sense. So persistence, co-creation, and get people to possibly drink the Kool-Aid or believe in you. Thank you.
The infamous Kool-Aid, we talk about that a lot, especially working with the school board and having certain people. But I think Steve, Blaine, and I think Stan, you may have said it before, right? It's that care, that passion. Without that, it becomes like being creative and trying to do things differently and coming up with the resistance. That takes a lot of work. And if you don't have that passion for whatever it is you're trying to do, then you know, it becomes almost impossible to get yourself out of the box, in the box. I'm kind of confused now where we are as far as the box goes. But like, I find it very interesting, you know, for 27 years, I've worked with the school board, and the most rewarding time of my life has been doing the exact same job that I get paid for free at Sunday school. Like, I've never felt more appreciated, and it was more rewarding and interesting. That goes back to the paid, not paid piece. So I think, you know, like a lot of people have said, it's that care, that passion that allows you to kind of move forward.
Well, and this is where, as I can't say enough, right? This is where I enjoy our idea jams, because we get to see outside of the boxes that we exist in. So working within a school board, you know, environment, like, you're very limited sometimes into the roles that people do, the things that are happening around you, and you kind of stop seeing the color sometimes. So this is where it's nice to hear different perspectives. And although a lot of us will share the similar jobs, or we work in those environments that are like-minded that way, it's interesting to hear the generational differences and just see where we're coming from so many different angles that way. Because being creative and using your imagination really isn't something that we can put a rubber stamp on and say, this is what it is and this is how it frames out. It's not something that we can point to and go, well, that's really creative. That isn't. Well, that's really using your imagination. Yeah, but that one isn't, right? It's not really that simple. It's not as easy as we know about putting it in the boxes, only working within that. It is way more than that. So when we feel that we are kind of backed off and limited, we really need to kind of come back into our minds for a moment and recognize that we really are limitless in our possibilities, right? As Fred alluded to earlier, and you know, or as he said, and I'm with him, I'm not practically minded to kind of do certain things, but I recognize that my talents shine in other places. So where I can't, somebody else can. And when we work in conjunction with each other, this is where we really kind of can make all of our imaginations sort of flow. So we know that while it's not always easy being creative in the environments that we can, we need to shift our perspectives, right? When we create the boxes that we're trapped in, well, we have to make sure that we don't lose sight of how do we get out of it. We need to approach our limitations and take a different viewpoint. We need to shift how we see that. We need to motivate ourselves, because it's then that we get unexpected innovations, really great ideas, and very good outcomes. We also need to remember, especially in the times where we are so in the box that we kind of can't see the daylight, that we are the creators and the limits of our confines. And this includes at work, at home, at play. We need to use every opportunity to dream, to think, to sing, to dance, to just create our way through everything. Our creativity and imagination can be limited by absolutely no one but ourselves. We were created to create. Kaylin, final thoughts?
That was a good final thought, Stan. I think my final thought is, you know, I feel like I'm coming out of this way more motivated to, you know, continue on my PD day journey. Maybe a little less planning, because I am putting myself in the box, and I need to reframe how I'm thinking to be a little bit more positive, right? So thinking like a child, and taking the box and then turning it into a rocket ship maybe would be very nice, right? So using my creativity to create something and reframing, and getting something out of this, even if it's, you know, hard at first, right? I think, you know, we're only one thought or one drawing or, you know, one move, one song away from being creative. And like you said, nothing can limit us but us. And we need just to stop getting in our own way sometimes. So, and then also thank you, everyone. It's not very, did not feel very panicky. So thank you for that.
That's awesome. Thank you for myself, everybody, as well, for all of that.
Well, it is about that time where we are very conscious of the time. So it's time that we need to bring our evening to a close, which is unfortunate, because this has been really amazing. And honestly, I'm kind of excited to go back to work these days. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Stan and Kaylin, for sharing this evening. It's been wonderful. Thank you for everybody for all of your thoughts too.
Well, this is always a joy to spend that time with you each session, and I want to thank my wife Natasha for filling in for me as chair this evening. Thank you. You did a wonderful job. We do want you to know that Scenic is socially connected, so check out our website at www.canadiannetworkforcreativity.com. We've got all of our idea jams updated so you can see what's happening from here on in. We can be found on Instagram, Facebook, X, YouTube under Scenic. Find us online for information to register for idea jams. Share that information out to your friends. You can see our bios, our information, view past jams, and see just helpful information to help you know what's coming up with us. As we close for the evening, I want to thank you again for joining us for this past hour. This means so much to us. And a big thank you to my colleague Kaylin for our chat, and again for my wife for filling in as chair. Be back with us again next month on March the 20th, as we will be speaking with Mary Blatherwick and her guest Matt McGuire, as we look at fostering creativity, design, and problem solving through digital technology. On behalf of all of us here at Scenic, thank you again for spending your Thursday evening with us. Thank you for sharing your creativity, your imagination, your thoughts, and we look so much forward to seeing you all again next month. Thank you, everybody, and have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.